All right, I'm in the Gospel of John. Gospel of John, I'll be in chapter 19, for the most part between verses 8 and 11. That's where I'm going to spend most of my time, I think, in this message. John chapter 19, verses 8 through 11, this would be the trial before Pilate. Now, let's review a little bit about what has happened in order to get us to this point of the trial. What has happened is that Jesus was arrested by the Romans because there was an accusation against him for violating Roman law. That's why they would arrest him. The soldiers who arrested him did not take him to the Roman compound, and I explained in previous messages that this is probably because Judas disappeared. Judas was the witness who would testify against Jesus at the trial that would be held at the Roman compound. Judas apparently disappeared, and so they took Jesus to the religious leader, Annas, who was not even recognized by the Romans as having any authority or any power there in the land. However, I explained previously that they probably did that because they had what I would describe as a religious experience. Jesus was eventually taken to Caiaphas, and then by force, Jesus was taken to the Roman compound by all of these religious leaders, and they gave the accusation eventually. We're going to see that in just a moment. They eventually gave the accusation that Jesus was claiming to be God, as if that's some kind of violation against Roman law, But up until this point where I am presently at, he has not done anything that would justify him being there, and they have not presented any legitimate accusation. Now, what was their motive? I mean, what are they really trying to do here? They want Jesus to be executed for a couple of reasons. The reasons that we have described are have to do with the risk and concern of Jesus's popularity. There could be the risk that the Romans would see Jesus leading a revolution of some kind, and if Jesus did, if he was asserted as the king there in the land, then the Romans would be at risk of having to engage in war in order to assert their authority or to evacuate and leave, which is not going to happen in a peaceful way, if I was to say it that way. So there was the opportunity for tremendous conflict if the people embraced Jesus as the king. All right, now, so if this is the case, then the religious leaders, the Sanhedrin, what they were at risk of is that the Romans might see this happening, and they might just decide, you guys are not doing a very good job of maintaining order in this society, and so we're going to replace you with other people who we think will do this job better. They could have done that just simply by force. They could have replaced the religious leaders by saying, you people are no longer making these decisions. We're not going to recognize you as being the legitimate authorities here. We're going to put some other people in power, and these are the people who are going to be making these decisions locally, instead of you. So they were at risk of losing their job, their position, and as far as they were concerned, this would justify murder, right? They felt that murdering somebody is perfectly acceptable when they are at risk of losing their job, or there could be a war. And that was another concern that was expressed, that there could be a war. And so, in order to save the people from war, we're going to murder this guy. That this was part of what was going on. But another thing that was not mentioned that I think is relatively obvious is that Jesus made them feel uncomfortable. All right? He made them feel uncomfortable. He made them feel bad because he told the truth. And so because of that, well, of course, that's a good enough reason for these people to murder him. All right? And you might find that to be a little awkward or a little surprising, But it turns out that there are a lot of people. People are like this. There are a lot of people. I've encountered people like this in my life quite often. I could give you a list of people. There are people all over the place who are alive even today, who are alive in every generation, I would say, who have this kind of an attitude that if anyone makes them feel uncomfortable, or makes them feel bad, well, then this person is worthy of death, and if they can't find a way to murder them and get away with it, well, they will cause as much pain and suffering and destruction as they can get away with just because they felt bad, or they felt uncomfortable. All right? And so this is how they solve the problems of life, how they solve, if I was to say, I feel bad, because of what you did or because of what you said, so I'm going to solve this problem that I have by causing as much harm to you as I possibly can. This is often described as revenge. It's a form of revenge. And, there's a great sense of accomplishment. People feel really good about themselves. They feel like they've really accomplished a lot. They feel that sense of success and meaning and purpose in life, that kind of stuff, because they have caused you harm. And like I've said, I've encountered more than enough people like this in my own life that I can say with absolute confidence that there are a lot of people out there who, are like this. Okay, and many of these people, they just have not necessarily had so much of an opportunity, but given the opportunity, this is what will come out of them. And it's very troubling, and it's very disturbing, and it's very unfortunate, that this is the way that many people are. But you've got to be aware of this, that there is an element of revenge that is being expressed by these people because Jesus made them feel bad, Now, this is a very inappropriate way to relate to other people. If you feel bad, if somebody has made you feel uncomfortable, all right, then that doesn't mean, it's your obligation before God, and before civilization to harm them in return. Okay, there are more appropriate ways to solve these kinds of problems. All right? So instead people will, solve these problems in these highly dysfunctional ways. And the end result, of course, is to create more problems, And when you solve the problems of life in ways that create more problems, then this is highly dysfunctional. It just is. But that is the nature of the world, and that is the way life goes. But if people would, which they're not, but if they would solve problems in more appropriate ways, then there could be great things that could result on the other side of these kinds, of approaches and ways of solving these kinds of issues. So that's what's going on. All right. And so when they bring Jesus to Pilate and he asks them, what did he do? Of course they're not going to tell him what Jesus did. They're not going to be open and honest. They're not going to be truthful. Because if they were, then of course Pilate is going to say, I'm not going to have any part of this at all. And that would be right. Okay, now Pilate has a different kind of power than they have. Let's talk about the power structure a little bit here. Pilate has what could be considered to be absolute power. Absolute power in the sense that he has the power of the sword. He can execute people, and no one's going to come and necessarily question what he's doing. He's not going to be put on trial for executing someone. That's the kind of power that he has. Now, of course, there are some circumstances where there could be some concerns raised and there could be some consequences, but that's related to the people who Pilate answers to. And he doesn't answer to anybody here in this part of the world, in this region. So he has this element of absolute power, and it's necessary in many cases in order to maintain civility and maintain civilization, that sometimes there are people who just simply have to have a lot of power in order to maintain society, especially when you're dealing with a lot of other weird people like this, okay? But these other weird people, like this, they don't have that absolute power, and they, of course, let the Romans know we don't have the power to execute this guy. If we did, we would, okay? But they're not going to do it because they're concerned about the consequences, the repercussions, that they are definitely going to experience greater problems if that's how they want to solve this one. So they recognize that and they decide not to pursue that. But they have a different kind of power, all right? And and you'll notice what they have and how they use it. What they have is they have manipulation. Okay, and manipulation is a form of power, and it is normally composed of dishonesty, or at least a portion of it. Okay, maybe 10% dishonesty, 90% honesty. You would normally find some element of truth in every discussion, argument, or whatever, and of course, plenty of lies. All right, that's the idea of manipulation. The idea of manipulation is that there is a combination of dishonesty and honesty, or there could be absolute dishonesty. But either way, manipulation is an expression of power. That they are going to, they're going to be involved in other people's lives in order to get other people to do things or not to do things through using manipulation, which is usually involving dishonesty, and quite often has the elements of extortion and blackmail. All right, extortion and blackmail. Usually, blackmail is the preferred, the preferred element that people strive for. I've had relationships with people where they have worked so hard to find some way that they could blackmail me, even today, I still have people watching videos and stuff and listening to my programs for the sole purpose, just this, their only purpose is to find some way to get, to catch me saying something that they can use to blackmail me with, that is the ultimate goal of their lives, to have the power of blackmail over somebody else, because they noticed that extortion didn't work out very well with me. That, they're not going to necessarily extort me. And, in general, blackmail isn't going to work either, because I'm the kind of person who say, yeah, okay, I did that. I said that. I made that mistake. I'll just admit it. I've been through enough problems and complications of life that, I understand there will be loss. So be it. Why? Because the truth is more important to me. The truth is important. All right. Now, that doesn't mean that I have to expose every truth that may exist, but I can confess and admit that I've done something wrong if somebody wants to question me about that. And of course, every day I'm doing something wrong, I'm sure. But that is the other element of power that you're going to see here, and that is the power of the truth. But it's a different kind of power. All right. So you've got the people who are using manipulation, dishonesty, extortion, blackmail. Pilate, who's in charge here, he just uses a different form of power. He uses the power of the sword, or in the modern age, the power of the gun. Whoever is allowed to carry a gun and to shoot somebody to kill them, because they're the police or they're the military, whatever. These people are necessary, but it's a different kind of power. All right. In this case, Pilate has the power of the sword. So this is what's happening. Pilate has a conversation with Jesus. Let me review that. This is in chapter 18. He has a conversation with Jesus let's go to verse 37. Pilate therefore said to him, "Are you a king then?" Jesus answered, "You say rightly that I am a king. For this cause I was born, and for this cause I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Now, Jesus did say earlier as well that his kingdom, and this is in verse 36, his kingdom is not of this world. So, Pilate says, you say you're a king. Yeah, but I'm not of this world. So Jesus does express to Pilate that there is no risk of Jesus invading the land or asserting authority in the land, of taking away Pilate's power. That's not what Jesus is doing there. He's a king, but he's a king from out of town, in that sense, is what he tells him. But he says at the end of verse 37, everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. All right, he speaks about the truth. This is what his power is based on. It is based on the truth. All right, now the other two groups of people, they have absolute power, or they have power through manipulation, dishonesty, and extortion and blackmail. But see, those forms of power have to do with having a relationship with another person in a way that you can exercise force against their willful, voluntary behavior. This is important, so let me say it again. These are people who are wanting to exercise force on someone else against their willful, voluntary behavior. All right, what this means is that these people, they want to have a relationship with you, or in this case, they want to have this relationship with Jesus, such that his willful, voluntary behavior, what he wants to do, what he will do on his own accord, what he decides to do, from their point of view, this has no relevance. All right, and so you'll find that people relate to you in this way, that whatever you want to do, whatever's important to you, whatever you think, whatever you feel, none of that has any relevance at all. The only thing that matters is, will you do what they want you to do, or will you not do, what they want you to do? Which means that they want to have this relationship with you such that you do not have willful, voluntary behavior. Or you don't. Okay, your will has no relevance. Okay, what you want to do, what's important to you, has no relevance. All right, that another way to look at this is that you only exist to be their slave. It's another way that this can be expressed. That's your only purpose for existence, is to do what they want you to do, not do what they don't want you to do, and or of course give to them whatever you have, or if you don't have it, then you have to go get it, that kind of thing. It's force. It's all about force. All right? And so if they cannot have a relationship with you such that your willful, voluntary behavior is acceptable to them, then they will impose upon you the relationship of force. All right? Pilate has this absolute force. You will do what I say, or I'm going to crucify you, and the other people, well, you will do what I say, or we're going to use dishonesty, manipulation, extortion, blackmail, whatever we can come up with in order to force upon you what we want you to do or not to do. And that is going to be the relationship. And, people prefer, if they could have it, they prefer the absolute power of force. Because, of course, that's the easiest, do what I say or I'm going to murder you. And then they'll just kill you, murder you, and then go find somebody else. Because you're nothing. You're absolutely nothing to them. You're totally irrelevant, except for the fact that there's going to have to be a little bit more effort required on their part to go find another person. So it's better to hang on to you as long as possible, because that effort, could involve pain of some kind, discomfort of having to go and have and meet a new person, kind of thing. All right, but this is the preferred way that people would like to have. They would like to have the power of, you will do what I say or I will put you to death, kind of power. All right, because it's the easiest. The next easiest to have a relationship with somebody else is manipulation, dishonesty, extortion, blackmail. That's the next easiest in order to get people to have a relationship with them in the way that they want. It's the next easiest to use those techniques, to use those dysfunctional methods, all right, which is why people use them. They're easier. But this is the kind of relationship that they want to have with other people. They want to have this relationship based on their ability to manipulate others, into being their slaves, kind of thing. All right, but then there is the relationship based on truth, which has no force applied to it at all. This is the kind of relationship that our God wants to have with us. All right, that your God wants to have with you. He does not want to have a relationship with you according to force. All right, now, of course, he can exercise absolute power, and say, you will believe in me, you will love me, or I will kill you. He could do that, but that's not what he does. And of course you might be thinking, yeah, well, in the end, he makes a decision about sending people to hell. Well, I understand that, but that's a different kind of decision. And that's something that happens at the absolute end, when a decision has to be made. But what about right now? What about today? Does he relate to you in that way? Today, chances are you're going to go to sleep tonight and you're going to wake up in the morning. You'll have a new day tomorrow. What about today? Today, he wants to have a relationship with you on the basis of truth, not on the basis of force, right? So, that is something to understand about your God in comparison with other people. All right? And this is another way of understanding why so many people do not want to have a relationship with God, because they can't use or exercise absolute power against him, and they cannot exercise manipulation, dishonesty, extortion, or blackmail against him, as much as people really try. You really pay attention to what people say if you ask them, so what do you think about God? And just listen to them talk, and they're constantly looking for some way to extort him or blackmail him. It's unreal, but that's what I get a lot when I have conversations with people. So they don't want to have a relationship with anybody that they can't extort, blackmail, or manipulate, especially God. All right? But this is what Jesus says. He says, look, I want to have a relationship based on truth. That's why I'm here. And I'm from out of town. All right? That's why I'm here, is to have a relationship on the basis of truth. This was an invitation to Pilate to have a relationship with him that he's willing to have, but, also that could be based on the truth, which means that it's going to be a relationship that is real, okay? And the willful, voluntary behavior between both parties of this relationship being given maximum freedom can be good, it's not good to have a relationship with someone who is only in your life because they can manipulate you, extort you, or blackmail you, right? That's not the kind of relationship you want to have with a person. Now, of course, they'll be dishonest and try not to let you know that that's really how they relate to you. But one day when you figure it out, that that's who they really are, that I could describe as an absolute psychopath, if that's, when you discover that, you better be quick, be quick and decisive and get them out, seriously. But when you find those people with whom you can have these relationships with, this is good, and these are wonderful relationships that can exist. Jesus invites Pilate to have this kind of a relationship with him, but then what does he do? He just says, well, what is truth? And he just walks out, as if to say, truth has no relevance here. He deals with absolute power, and he goes out and he has this relational experience with these other people who are into manipulation, dishonesty, extortion, and blackmail. And he tries to work with them. He tries to work with them. He tries to come to some kind of an agreement, some kind of terms with them. And that didn't work out so well for him, but he did have an opportunity to learn a lot about these people. All right, so in chapter 19, Pilate took Jesus and he scourged him. All right, and he brought Jesus out to the people, trying to solve it this way. So what was he trying to do? He was trying to say, okay, we're going to solve this conflict by me giving in to your desire for revenge. That's how we're going to solve it. We're going to solve this conflict by me cooperating in a way that you can get your sense of revenge because Jesus made you feel uncomfortable. So he made Jesus feel very uncomfortable. He scourged him. He put thorns into his head, right? That's what he did. He embarrassed him. He made Jesus feel very uncomfortable. And was that enough for the people? No. All right, when you're dealing with people like this, you're never going to be able to satisfy their lust for causing pain to somebody else. You will never satisfy that, all right? Because there isn't going to be enough to satisfy these people. If Jesus is killed, well then no further discomfort can be imposed on Jesus because he's dead. So that is when they will be satisfied, because it's just impossible to cause any more discomfort to this other person. You see, the needs that we have within us were created by God such that the needs of our hearts could only be fulfilled by a real and genuine and truthful relationship with our God. And when people are trying to get these inner needs met by doing things like this, then it's never going to be enough, and it's never going to be enough. And so it will go on and on and on until you are dead. All right. I often remember one of the great philosophers, Kyle Reese. You'll probably know him as he's had his appearance on the movie The Terminator, and the great philosopher Kyle Reese explained the Terminator in this way, and it's not going to be a complete quote because it's been a while since I've seen the movie. I should see it soon, just in order to get refreshed, of course. But he said something to the effect of, it has no pity, it has no remorse. All right, you can't bargain with it. You're not going to be able to negotiate with it. I definitely am not getting this correct, but it has no sense of pity or remorse, and it absolutely will not stop ever until you are dead. Okay? It was such a profound expression because I've had many people in my life of whom that is the perfect description of who they are and how they would relate to me. Perfect, absolutely perfect. And they're still alive, and they still go after me whenever they can, until I am dead, because then it's over. All right. And this is what Jesus is faced with. Okay. This is what he's faced with. So no matter how much discomfort is caused upon Jesus, it's not going to satisfy them. So they continue and they call for his crucifixion. And then Pilate gets afraid, all right? And that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to verse 8. Therefore, when Pilate, this is from verse 7, the Jews answered him, "We have a law, and according to our law, he ought to die because he made himself the Son of God." Therefore, when Pilate heard that saying, he was the more afraid and went again into the praetorium and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. I'll come back to that in just a minute, all right? He was more afraid, all right? Now, why was he afraid before? Now he's more afraid? Why was he? He was afraid before, okay, because he's dealing with these people with whom you can never bargain with, all right? You can't negotiate with these people. You're not going to be able to satisfy their lust for murder, all right? And for their desire for revenge. You're never going to satisfy this. This is who these people are, They're definitely the kinds of people who just really need to be sent to hell. There's all right, there's nothing God can do with these people. All right, but Pilate was the more afraid. All right, now, he's really in an awkward position because he's trying to come to an agreement, all right, with these people outside. And this is a scary thing to do because you already know that they are dishonest, manipulative, and they're looking for some opportunity for extortion or blackmail. All right? And so this is very awkward. Pilate is trying to make some kind of an agreement, trying to have some kind of satisfactory resolution to this conflict with these kinds of people. This puts him in a very awkward position because, how is he going to do that? This is a real challenge. It's a big challenge when it comes to these kinds of folks, and eventually it really can come down to absolute power. It's just going to have to come down to, well, Pilate's going to have to impose on them, look, this is the way things are, and if you oppose it, then it's going to be the sword. And that's usually how these kinds of relationships find resolutions. Eventually, it's just all about, well, who's going to use the sword? How is the sword going to be used? That kind of thing is what people will look for, because they will pursue and persist until you are dead, And so Pilate has got these concerns. Now, what are his real concerns at the moment before they present the issue that Jesus is the Son of God? Well, his concern, of course, is that if he executes this guy, he has executed an innocent person. He knows that. Jesus is guilty of nothing. If he executes him, he's executed an innocent person. The people who are not present there at the Roman compound, outside the gate, there's a lot of people out there in the community, in the rest of the country, in the rest of the nation. What are they going to do when they find out that Pilate has executed an innocent person? These other people out there, they might revolt. And now he's got new problems to solve. So it goes back to what I described earlier, that a dysfunctional solution is solving a problem that eventually creates more problems. All right? And so he's got this risk that he has to deal with, and this is going to create a sense of fear of what will be the consequences if he executes this innocent man. Now, if he doesn't, well, then what are these people going to do to him because he didn't execute this innocent person? And so this is where, the greater fear can start to build up, because he definitely can't trust them with anything. They've made that abundantly clear by bringing this innocent guy up here. So there's some additional concern. This is a greater fear that is going to build up. And this is what happens after the trial, all right, which I'll come back to probably in the next message. But at the moment, his fear has to do with what are the rest of the people in this country going to do if I execute this guy? And then when they let him know that he has said that he is the Son of God, now he's a holy guy, he's a holy man. He's not just some king, but now he's a man of God, and that could result in a greater risk of there being a revolt, where the other people who are not present are then going to definitely get involved, because not only did Pilate execute an innocent man, but he executed an innocent man of God. And that's a bigger concern. But now, all right, from verse 7, now we have an accusation. Finally, after all of this, we've got an accusation. What do they say? He said that he's this person. All right, and in the previous message, I mentioned this, I think, about the idea of, well, so what? So he said he's the Son of God. Just call him a crazy person and get on with your life. Just get on with your life. Who cares? What's the big deal? Just say, okay, this guy's got some issues, and then, get on with your life. But we have an accusation, so Pilate can now go in and have this conversation with him. And what does he say, right? What does he say in verse 8? Pilate goes in there and he asks Jesus, where are you from? Now, after all of this, right? Hey, where are you from? I mean, I can just imagine Jesus thinking something that would sound like, you've got to be kidding me, right? What kind of a question is that? What relevance does that have to anything? Where am I from? And what is he going to say? I'm from Nazareth. I'm from heaven. What would it matter? What would it matter where he's from? Right now, he's there. Let him go. Okay. Let the guy go. What difference does it make where he's from? What has he done? He's done absolutely nothing. And so Jesus, I could just imagine, he just looks at him like, why? Why would you even ask me such a question? And yet, why would he even ask why? So why say anything? What's the point? What's the purpose? What's the relevance? So Jesus doesn't respond. What would it matter if he did, right? Verse 8, but Jesus gave him no answer. That's verse 9. Verse 10, then Pilate said to him, are you not speaking to me? Are you not speaking to me? Do you not know that I have power to crucify you and power to release you? So he lets him know, look, this is my absolute power. I can let you go or I can kill you. Are you not even going to talk with me? Don't you recognize my importance? Am I not worthy of conversation? Is that what our relationship is going to be about? Well, Jesus just simply puts it into the situation of, look, I just said I'm about the truth and you walked out on me. You walked out on me. You came back. You want to have a conversation? What about it's going to be about the truth. And if it's not, and since you're not, that to you it has no relevance, then there just isn't anything to say. All right. There's nothing to say anymore. If we're not going to have a relationship based on truth of two people being able to exercise their complete, willful, voluntary behavior, Jesus can exercise his, Pilate can exercise his, and they will have a relationship based on agreement and truth. If we're not going to have that, well, then there isn't going to be anything. It's going to be that. It's going to be something real and legitimate and righteous and holy, or it's going to be nothing. That was the scenario. That was the situation. Okay, and Pilate let him know, in effect, that's how it's going to be. He says, look, I have the power to exercise my willful, voluntary behavior such that I will let you go or I will kill you. And you, what do you get? You get the opportunity to say something. Okay? Even though whatever you say has no relevance. That's your willful, voluntary behavior that I will allow you to have. I will allow you to say something that will have no relevance unless, of course, it's something that could be used against Jesus for extortion or blackmail. All right? That's the position that he puts him in. So, of course, he's going to say nothing. What is there to say? All right? And he says, so Pilate reminds him, I can either let you go or I can kill you. Jesus answered, you can have no power at all against me unless it had been given to you from above. Therefore, the one who delivered me to you has the greater sin. All right, so the people outside, they're worse than you. All right? They are more evil and wicked and sinful than you are. Now, Jesus asserted that Pilate had this power over him given to him by God. We don't know the details of how that was worked out. My first impression is just from the point of view that God is not going to intervene. And so if he's not going to intervene, he's going to allow Pilate to decide to let him go or to kill him. All right, do you see that? God puts the decision in Pilate's hands. He allows Pilate to do whatever he wants to do. Not whatever God wants him to do, but whatever Pilate wants to do. He gives Pilate the power of complete, willful, voluntary behavior. Right? This is how God relates to humanity. With some exceptions, he has intervened now and then. All right? But this is something that I want you to see, that God is giving Pilate the option to choose, to decide. You have the power to let him go. You have the power to kill him. That's right. There you go. Let's see what you do with it. And if Pilate let Jesus go, if he did, then things would continue. There probably would be a lot more written about the ministry of Jesus. All right? But if he kills him, well, God is going to make use of that as well. And he did. All right? That was the invocation of the new covenant and the presentation of the gospel. So God responded to the decisions that other people made, but he did not overcome their will or use manipulation or dishonesty or extortion or blackmail. He didn't use that. He doesn't use that over people. He does his thing while we do our thing, and he achieves a people who will be in his life because they want to be. All right? And these are transitions that people can go through in terms of absolute power to this other kind of power, of manipulation and the such. And those who want to live on the basis of truth and the basis of mutual agreement with other people that is honest and truthful and not manipulative, all right, there's going to be very few. If you look at all the people here, you've got the one who has the absolute power, you've got all the others, and then you got the one who is there on the basis of truth. And the one who is on the basis of truth, Jesus, is alone. All right? Now, please remember this. To be a person who lives by the truth will mean, in most cases, that you will be alone. All right? Now, as for someone like myself, I've experienced so much. The magnitude is just beyond description. So much abuse from other people, exercising absolute power and manipulation and dishonesty and extortion and blackmail over me and my life. I've experienced so many psychopaths in my life that to be alone is appealing. Okay, it's just and it's easy, because when I am honest about these previous experiences, the honest representation of that, the truth of that, was that I was alone. And so to be alone for someone like myself who has endured and overcome and been on the other side of so much of that, to be alone is trivial. It's just, well, that's just the norm. Okay, that's just normal. But I want you to understand that for the most part, you are going to feel quite alone. And this is where Jesus is. He is alone. All right? Please try to remember that and understand that this is a consequence of a person who wants to live in reality, who wants to live in the truth. And if you want to have relationships with others that are genuine and are real. Okay, so he says, look, you wouldn't have any power against me at all unless it was given to you by God, and this is a way that's done. What is the power? God has given him the power of choice, of decision. So Pilate is going to decide how he's going to handle this. All right? And those who manipulated him are more evil than he is. Okay? This is another thing to understand about the character and the nature of God, and to see this situation through his eyes. Okay, the Romans executed Jesus, and that's evil. All right? But God, as far as God is concerned, the greater evil was all of the manipulation, dishonesty, and the extortion, blackmail, that kind of behavior of the people. He considers that to be more evil than the execution, than the murder. All right? He considers that to be more evil. We, on the other hand, we would think murder, and execution to be a greater evil. But you ask the Lord to give you insight concerning this as to why he would consider that to be a greater sin or greater evil, and see what he may reveal to you about that from his perspective, about the magnitude of the destruction that takes place. All right, the magnitude of the destruction is much greater. Okay, going to verse 12. From then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, saying, now, I want you to see that, okay, that Pilate was wanting, his decision was, I got to find a way to get this guy out of here and not execute him. So there was a part of him who was genuinely wanting to just let Jesus go. Okay? So what was it? What was it that affected Pilate to an extent where he finally called for Jesus' execution? It wasn't God. All right? It wasn't God saying, okay, I have decided that by my will, Pilate will crucify Jesus. There are a lot of people who really want to believe that. That is not what was going on. That's not what we have here. Okay, Pilate really wanted to let him go, but why didn't he? What was it that overcame Pilate's desire? What was it that got to him? I'll talk about this in the next message, but I'll tell you, it was extortion. All right? The people finally found a way to extort Pilate. That was the solution from their point of view, and he gave in to the extortion, and I'll talk about that in the next message. Okay, for those of you who are using this for your small groups, I got a couple of questions for you. I got two of them because the first one I thought, you may not want to answer this one. But hey, it's a good question. What kinds of poor decisions have you made out of fear? Have you ever made any really bad decisions because your fear overcame you? That may be a little bit too personal. Don't worry, I got another question for you. Have you ever been alone in the truth? You might find that one a little bit more attractive to have a discussion with in your small group. Have you ever been alone in the truth? Maybe that's how you feel in this group. I don't want to create that kind of an issue, but that's that's a question that can stir up some conversation. All right, and I will continue in the next message. Thanks.